Kalimera Adelphia Kiadelphez, Afaristo Politonteo Hiasimera, El Piso Nakimiti Kiskala, Ime Carlos, Afaristo Yaton Endia Ferashu, Sasakapo Olus. Good morning. Be thankful for your life. I'm thankful for your time. I love you all. Nature's unalterable laws. People are individuals with characteristics. Humans are a species with traits. In this time of civil unrest and global offset, we must proceed with humanity in mind for the sake of prosperous generations to come. None of us have decided the details of nature's unalterable laws. But to balance that, we all have equal opportunity, whether or not to respect those details and honor them in our life experience. Air. We need clean air for clean lungs and to avoid a lot of the problems associated with air pollution. And if you think about your body and correlate it to the earth, well, you could think of it much like smoking a cigarette and the processes that we as humans excuse that are very directly continuing to pollute our air. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. Every single day that you smoke cigarettes, you're compounding the issue until eventually you develop a health issue. And it doesn't really matter if you like it or not. If we wake up every day or even don't ever stop polluting the air with these factories, well, the problem is getting worse, and it's not going to stop getting worse because that's nature being very bold and responding to the human's choices. So, to avoid that kind of internal pollution and all the issues associated with it, you can just not smoke cigarettes and all of the problems are avoided. If you've already been smoking cigarettes and you quit them, it takes time, but the body very much so has the ability to heal itself from a lot of the damage done during the time that you were smoking cigarettes. And if the humans have the willpower to walk away from the factories and the factory foods and actually just fund the farmers to feed the children real food, well, that would make a very significant difference to nature. And nature could start to heal itself, and we would no longer be polluting the air every day, we very logically and practically have found lots of modern ways to produce power and a lot of different things that are essential to our civilization. And outdated, harmful methods that are continuing to pollute the air, well, they need to be called what they are: harmful, outdated methods. And we need to change them for the protection of our air quality. And if we don't, well, then we just keep smoking cigarettes. And we know nothing justifies smoking a cigarette, but we're still justifying those factories. We need clean water. Clean water is essential for all life. And we've lost a lot of species of fish. And the fish are very confused. And the air quality and the water quality are very, very connected. The air is going to settle into the water, and the water is going to rise up into the air. And the factories are very much so continuing to pollute our environment that we're living in. And we're justifying it for finance mostly, and for food addiction, because a lot of people don't even realize what's happening there, because it's normalized. I'm going to speak very openly and broadly, but reasonably, practically, about funding our farmers. Thank you very much for your interest in my perspective on this topic. If we find the willpower to walk away from our factories and fund our farmers, well, the individuals that are working in factories can very much so continue to make food for the population in a garden. They don't have to feel like they're losing a job because they're not working in a factory. They can work in a garden. And one of the problems we have with mass crops is the sprays. And I'm not attacking the sprays in that I know they try to use responsible sprays. And very directly, we still do need to rinse our vegetables and fruit because of the sprays. So, responsibly, we want to minimize the sprays at best. If you buy fresh produce from a community farmer that just has a farm in their yard, well, they're not using a lot of the sprays because they don't have the area to cover. So very logically, if the farmers were able to split their large crops up into smaller portions and be properly funded, well, they would have the money to hire the factory workers, to split the land up into smaller portions, to cut back on their sprays, which is cutting out their overhead costs, because without even being a farmer, we all know those sprays are not cheap. So they're saving money there. They're being funded so they can hire the hands. The hands they need to hire are the hands that are going to lose their jobs from the factories. But the humans are still working and earning currency. The farms are trying to be more responsible in their production, but expanding their production. And in that way, we just keep working, but just in a more nature-based, proper direction for future generations. Now, I see some families, farm families in Alberta. I send a lot of peace and love to the West Coast and Alberta. You're far away from me, geography, but very much so part of my heart as a proud Canadian. I love you all. But I see farmers in Alberta that are not hiring individuals, hiring families. So then it's up to the family how the work gets divvied up. If one person is stronger at it and can do more of it, well, the farmer doesn't really care. The work is getting done, the food is produced, and that family still earn their income. And that family has to, if they have children, work out how they're going to, divvy up their workload and who's going to do what. And that family could very much so come up with a good work system for itself. And then the farmers are hiring families rather than individuals that are earning currency to produce nature-based foods to fill a grocery store and feed our children back to natural health. Now, in reference to the funding, one very mature concept that I would like to put out there is if the farmers were funded a lot like athletes, where they maybe had a couple $1,000,000 for a couple years to hire hands and, expand their productions, and also had the push to really fill our grocery stores with natural foods. Well, by filling the grocery store with the natural foods, even for that first year off that 1 year's funding, even 1 year's funding or one cycle's funding, like say, give them the contract for the 5 years. Well, after those 5 years, they won't need your funding because they'll be self-sufficient and they'll have families hired and they'll be building up nature and feeding our children natural foods, and at the same time, keeping all the factory stuff out. So we'll be doing two good things. We'll be keeping the bad out and putting the good in. Our families are still working. They're feeling good about their work. They're learning how to feed themselves, and they're feeding their communities healthy foods. The farmers get the respect that they deserve because they are the ones that have the power to nurse us back to health. Now, if we don't do that, which I honestly don't actually expect the humans to do the right thing in reference to the factories and the farms, because they're too addicted and they're too worried about their finances. We keep going the way we are, we just keep smoking. And we know there's nothing that justifies it, and we're doing it anyway. And it doesn't matter if that pack of cigarettes is $20 or $2, because it's doing the same thing to your environment, regardless how much it costs. And the factories, they're making food that's giving us cancer. We didn't have cancer before the factory foods came into play, because natural foods don't trigger cancer cells. So we're justifying smoking that cigarette for a factory that's feeding our children food that's giving us cancer, rather than just following nature. It doesn't mean we don't need finance, but you see very clearly there's no need to feel like there won't be. And the people working in those factories, well, they'll still be working. More healthy jobs. More long-lasting jobs. Because you can invest in the farmers and the nature-based earnings forever. That's what God wants us to do. That's why it's here. It's been here since thousands of years before the factories. So finance is a matter of numbers. Numbers can be whatever we need them to be practical and modern in our living. So we can change them without people being too damaged and just, you know, continue in a more positive direction. But very directly, we didn't decide nature's unalterable laws, but we do have to decide whether we will or not follow those details that nature provides for us. And I mean, if we just keep smoking, we are going to be wiped off the planet because the planet isn't going to have a choice. It's the same as your body. You can't just smoke forever and not compound your issues and think that you're invincible and that nothing can like that can happen to you, because it's just not a realistic thought. And we will be wiped off the planet. And you know what will happen when we do? All the stuff that we need are humans doing with the farming and stuff that I mentioned. That is what the earth is going to do when it gets rid of us. Because that's what the earth wants. It just wants nature to expand. It just wants us to maintain nature. And we're making factories and polluting the air and polluting the water and killing the animals and killing ourselves with addictive foods instead of just following nature. So if nature gets to a point where we need to be removed because we just won't listen to nature and we won't abide by those rules, the planet will still be here and it will grow its own trees and expand its own crops without us here to destroy it. So these aren't my rules. And it's really frustrating to me to think that the humans aren't going to choose that. I'm working very hard and I'm praying every day that I'm reaching individuals that can make a difference to future generations, because the situation is so out of hand and the individuals responsible to protect our health and our finance are not going to. And we need modern concepts and modern solutions for modern lives and prosperous futures. And right now, it doesn't really matter where you live on the planet. There are no positive conversations coming out of politics. And there is a very good reason for that I'm not getting into right now because I don't have to, because the majority knows. So let's just remain peaceful amongst ourselves and sculpt a more long-lasting, solidified direction as nature-based creatures for prosperous futures for our children. Thank you again very much for your time and consideration. I love you all. Prepi no figo. I gotta go. Trote kala kia parlamente ICO daxe. Eat good and remain optimistic. Elini ahapi kietetiki anarase olus. Thank God again. In Dio Yotora.